you very much for the presentation. Also, many thanks to FIAR for inviting me to participate over here. It's a great opportunity to be with all of you, and I hope that I'll be able to throw some light in some of the key issues that affect intermediaries, but more importantly, to hear your views and what your comments are, because the important of this thing is to try and understand what's happening in the different markets, and to be able to have a sort of a global vision that help us all to try and manage our own businesses and see where we are trying to steer to. First of all, allow me to say what's BIPAR. BIPAR is the Federation of Intermediaries, European Intermediaries, and represents 52 associations all over the EU, as well as some non-EU members. And we represent the interest of the intermediaries in face of the European Commission and all different authorities. We feel that this is a very important commitment, because the fact of speaking with one voice can help to reach the message, and also the fact that this one voice also helps that we try and reach compromises that are for the better of the whole group, not only just one group or one association of intermediaries. Getting back to the topics of my presentation, I will be speaking mainly about the IDD. I thank Linka for having preserved part of her presentation for me, and we're not reiterating too many the same points. You're probably very familiar already with the status of implementation. We all know it's a minimum harmonization directive, which we feel is very good in the sense that preserves the national specificities. Although we strongly believe in one market, but we feel that it's important that not we get a coffee for everyone. I mean, it's important that things are taken into consideration locally for the best interest of consumers, as well as how to protect them. The IDD certainly tries to improve cross-border trade, which is very positive, but in that sense, we feel that sometimes there might be difficulties because of the difference in legislations. So this is something that, as I said, good, that is a minimum harmonization, but sometimes there might be certain issues because of this. This would be important that national authorities take into consideration what's happening and do not prevent or gold plate necessary initiatives to trade across the different borders. The IDD is already in place. It was affected in 2016 and will have to be implemented by 2018. But now we are working on level 2 legislation, which mainly focuses on delegated acts. Delegated acts have 4 parts, as we will see later on. The RTS, the ruling on the technical standards, and particularly the IDD, IPID, which is very important on its implementation. Let me check, go further on this one. Okay. What are the key issues, in my opinion, regarding IDD? Well, wider scope, which is very good, in the sense that it encompasses not only intermediaries, as the previous directive, but encompasses all players, particularly so insurers when they are distributing directly to the consumers or the clients, and any form of distribution, particularly in some countries the digital distribution or website comparators and so on were not properly legislated. So this aims to be a wide scope directive, and really to try and focus and provide a level playing field for anyone who is trying to distribute or sell products, whether it's to retail or enterprise type of business. It has some very serious information requirements, as well as transparency and conflicts of interest. It has preserved remunerations, so we are able, at least based on the IDD, to receive commissions or fees, and in some instances commissions and fees, provided there is sufficient transparency towards the client, and that we can prove that we have not been influenced to what type of products we offer, depending on whether we make more or less. This is something which is crucial, certainly for protection of consumers, but I'd also like to add something that sometimes might not be fully considered. Generally speaking, in most markets there is very strong competition, and a strong competition from an intermediary point of view means that we cannot just simply say, well, buy this or that. I mean, we really have to check the market, we really have to offer good products to our clients. So it's good there is some legislation, but also free market and providing the right environment in a market is as important as issuing legislation in this sense. Obviously, there are differences between non-life and life with an investment product. We feel that that categorization is very good in the sense that the products are different and the implications of the different legislations are certainly different depending on which of the products. That there is a greater transparency on the life with an investment element. It's logical because any charges, commissions or expenses directly impact the return that a client might have in the market, whilst in non-life this is less of an issue as it might be the case. The IPID to customer. First, we feel that should be, as it is in theory, going to be different for non-life to life, and particularly with to IBIPs or life with an investment element. We're not so sure how this is going to be implemented. EIOPA certainly says that the IPID is not meant to be in conflict or to replace the insurance contract. But as we all know, and that depends on the experience on each of the markets, sometimes the local laws or the local legislators can sort of view things in a different way. We have some fears, for instance, in the Spanish market, that it is interpreted as the contract, which is not the case. We have seen in the past cases where the insurers have been forced to pay based on the fact that the insurance contract was not fully signed or was not properly highlighted some of the exclusions on the contract. So this could bring some uncertainty on the direct application, although neither the Commission nor EIOPA seem to wish this case, but there is a certain risk that this could happen. CPD, it's certainly good, continuous professional development. We are in a service sector that requires serious and thorough knowledge of what we're offering to a product in order to assist our clients in what's best for their interest and for them to understand the differences between all the different products. However, caution must be made in terms of being proportionate to the type of product that is being offered, and also to take in consideration that distribution in the EU is mostly made of SMEs and in many cases small distributors, which, depending on what sort of targets are put on by the different national states, could become a problem in terms of use. Freedom of service and freedom of establishment. This, oddly enough, because one of the objectives of the IDD was to improve cross-border trade. But in fact, there is no definition of what's the triggering element in terms of freedom of services and freedom of establishment, which can lead to some confusion and perhaps put at risk consumer protection. Since it's not in the IDD, we feel that probably the best thing would be to update the Luxembourg Protocol to fully clarify what's the position from that end. Although there are not millions or certainly not even hundreds of thousands of cases where there is cross-border trade, because there are differences and there are certain barriers because of language, because of understanding of the products in the different countries. But in any case, there are cases, particularly on the property business, whereby owners can have properties in different countries, and this would be relevant that is clarified so there are no risk for the consumer, and that we have, in as much as possible, a good flow of business from one point or the other. Cross-selling practices, this is not only limited or not only addressed by the IDD. Also, the mortgage directive will have an impact on cross-selling practices, particularly to some areas where we are concerned because of the position of the consumer might be weakened in certain cases where they are forced to take one product based on the others. But this is being addressed on both sides. POG requirements, or the POG requirements. This is one of the biggest novelties in the directive, and will certainly put a challenge, particularly so for insurance companies, because many points still have to be defined, and how they're going to be applied. For instance, when you talk of product governance, should contracts be reviewed on a regular basis? Let me give you an example, and perhaps that's more private to the Spanish situation, but perhaps in your countries as well you can see that. When you offer an insurance to, let's say, to buy for someone a car, and you recommend that they take damage coverage, that makes sense when the car is new, because in the event of a major accident you are going to recover a very high percentage of the value of the car that you paid. But suppose that you get on with the same insurance company and you get on with the same contract, and after 8 years, really in the event of a major accident, you will recover only a small proportion of the value, simply because of logical devaluation of prices of the car. And then is that amount in line with insurance? Are you paying too much because in the event of a major accident you're only going to recover a little? Should the manufacturer of the product review that and inform the client? So it brings a number of points that have to be considered and which can be important. Also, it is very important to establish properly the difference, or who is really the manufacturer. I mean, generally speaking, the manufacturer is going to be the insurance company. However, in some instances, and sometimes quite often, distributors or brokers or agents do participate on the manufacturing. So it's important to establish exactly where we stand in terms of who is the manufacturer now and who's not, and also the liabilities arising from those parts. There is a possibility, and that's viewed in some cases, that although the liability would be joint in terms of manufacturers, in the case that there are different between insurance and the distributor, but that there should be perhaps a contract properly stating the obligations of each part in terms of the manufacturing. Also, although EIOPA has insisted on this, that no major changes or only major changes would in fact represent manufacturing a product, but there is a certain light line that can be easily crossed, and particularly brokers, when we try and obtain the better product or the best products for our clients, we do a bit of manufacturing. We do adapt the contracts to the needs of the clients, and sometimes you can have limited changes, sometimes there can be major changes. But this is a point that probably will need further clarification in the future. The sanction regime has been seriously stepped up, particularly for non-life with an investment element, and how this is going to be transposed to the different legislation is an area of concern, because it could, in the terms of particularly intermediaries, could really break distribution if that sanction regime is too extreme and not proportionate to the size and to the problem that has been caused. EIOPA measures, we will talk later on the delegated acts, and then EBIP's extra requirements. I'll go ahead and speak with that just in now. These are basically what I have touched upon right now. Again, let me stress that particularly on the cases of EBIPs, that no ban on commissions or has been introduced on the IDD, and we feel that this should be kept in the same way in the different legislations, because there is a risk that because of MiFID II legislation, that that has certainly an impact on EBIPs, that this is transposed, and we feel that generally a commission is a fair retribution system, and also it's a very democratic system that allows many people to obtain assistance and advice when purchasing the insurance. So we feel that national authorities should not go beyond what's stated on the IDD, and these allowances should be kept for all products and also in particular for EBIPs.
Juan Ramon, I will ask to speed up a bit.
It's about to finish, so not to worry.
Thank you.
I've sort of tried and summary up everything as
I
it
know.
is.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, on the delegated acts, I've touched upon most of the points, POG, conflicts of interest, inducements, which I find a very pejorative word because it looks like we are being induced to do something, and as I said, I think generally distributors try to work on the best interest of the clients, and we're not induced to sell something, but we try and provide what's best for our clients. And I will have to use the hand now because it doesn't seem to work. Thank you. Lastly, Mikhail touched on the ESA situation, which is something very important, and we certainly would support an independent insurance supervisory authority, as EIOPA is right now. So not much more to add to that. And lastly, allow me just briefly to for those of you who are not familiar, to mention what's the stakeholder group for insurance and reinsurance. We're a group composed of people from different trainings, from actuaries to consumer representatives to industry, whether it's insurance or distribution, as it is my case. And we really try and assist and try and bring comments to most of EIOPA's work. In that sense, just allow me to read the different topics that we are touching upon at this stage. Already on the last, since the last legislation, or in the last forming of the last group, which was May last year, we have given an opinion on Solvency II, on the ICS, on PRIPS, on IDD delegated acts, on IDD automated advice, on IDD EBIPs, on IPID, on pensions, big data, recovery and resolution, very shortly consumer trends, which is very, very important topic, fintech, also shortly to be produced, already given on ESA's reviews, and shortly we'll be working on action plan for consumer financial services, Solvency II review, ICS, the low interest rates and internal models. So as you can see, it's a very active group. Alexandru Shuncan, he's one of the members and leader of some of the topics that have and will be addressed. So we try and really provide assistance, and we would like, and we feel that it's a good way for EIOPA to have a good feel of what the views are of the different representatives from the different areas. And hopefully not being too much out of time, thank you very much. And